So, Knott's Berry Farm is building a Giga coaster. Please enlighten me. What genius started this rumor? This is probably the most ridiculous and unrealistic theory when it comes to roller coasters yet. Knott's Berry Farm, aka the tiny 57-acre family-friendly theme park including a nearly 100-year-old preserved ghost town and other historical charm and value, while also being surrounded by 4 major streets and neighboring businesses and residential areas, is gonna build a giant 300+ foot steel roller coaster for $30 million or more. Who thought that this was a good idea? Okay, so before I go any further, I would just like to immediately state that my employment at Knott's Berry Farm has absolutely nothing to do with my thoughts and speculation on this rumor. I have zero inside knowledge or news, and even if I did, I'm prohibited from exposing that type of information on social media, and even if I was allowed to, I still wouldn't disclose it for various reasons. So everything that will be discussed in this video is coming purely out of speculation from the perspective of an average park goer. Just wanted to make that clear before y'all start accusing me of bias or whatever just because I'm a ride operator. Anyways, with that aside, let the fun begin. First of all, let me go ahead and start this off by talking about one of the biggest and most obvious reasons Knott's Berry Farm is not gonna build a Giga coaster. The freaking space. Where on Earth, or in this case, on Knott's, do you intend on building a 300+ foot roller coaster with several hills and turns that each tower a couple hundred feet off the ground? Let me remind you that Accelerator is in the same park and is only a little over 200 feet and is a launch coaster and is very compactly and tightly squeezed into one little corner of the park, yet it still manages to take up a good 3/7 of the length of the park. Now we're talking about shoving a 300-foot roller coaster with a wide lift hill and a much wider and elongated layout into this place? Yeah, good luck. Oh, but wait guys, we could just throw it on top of the parking lot like everyone suggests. Yeah, allow me to point out some of the many things wrong with that. First of all, in order for this Giga coaster to start somewhere inside the park, to be accessible by guests, and to stretch out over to the southern parking lot, it literally has to cut straight through the backstage area with no exceptions. Now, I'm not allowed to disclose any information regarding the facilities backstage of Knott's, so all I'm gonna say is that cutting a roller coaster straight through it is extremely unfeasible. A lot of these buildings are very essential and cannot be torn down or relocated, especially because there's literally nowhere else these buildings can be relocated to. Once again, it's Knott's Berry Farm, the literal definition of a landlocked theme park. Even if this coaster managed to squeeze by the buildings, it's still going to have to be built over top all of the access roads and walkways for employees, so not only is it going to be impossible for this area to be used or accessible during construction of the coaster, but how on earth are large trucks and other vehicles going to navigate through these tiny and skinny walkways with giant steel supports up on the way? This also poses a constant danger and safety hazard to people working back there due to possible loose articles that would fall from the riders on board of this roller coaster. This same safety hazard applies to anyone in the parking lot as well, or what would be left of the parking lot if this thing was actually built. And speaking of which, let's move on to the parking lot. Look, if Knott's had extremely light crowds and never used all of their parking spaces up, then sure, they could sacrifice a portion of one of their parking lots. But keep in mind, Knott's technically has 5 parking lots used simply for guests just visiting the park, and on busy days, all 5 lots will fill up. So if we're gonna build a giant roller coaster designed to attract even more people, how are they gonna get away with sacrificing a large portion of one of the main lots? Like, I don't think you guys fully realize how many parking spaces they would have to get rid of in order to build this thing. Like guys, you can't just magically spawn a Giga coaster on top of the parking lot and just have it float there and expect it not to obstruct anything. Those support columns are gonna have to go somewhere, and as wide as they need to be in order to provide adequate support to the ride and the forces it's gonna exert, given it's gonna be traveling at speeds of around 90 miles an hour, then say goodbye to like half this parking lot. And if you don't believe me, well then let's just take things over to good old Microsoft Paint. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. As you can see, we have a Knott's Berry Farm right here. We got the parking lot. We got a Ghost Rider. We got a TGI Friday. Yeah, so we got Knott's Berry Farm. So here we go. We got zoom in. We got Pony Express right there. We got Calico River Rapids. You see? So right here we have Mystery Lodge. So we're building a Giga coaster, guys. We're getting a Giga. What we're gonna do? We're gonna grab my brush. We can make it nice and big. Red track. Yeah. So we got, look, Mystery Lodge right here, right? So we got a station. Actually, you know, let me make that a line. Make it look good. Yeah, make it look real good. So yeah, we got a station right there. Turn around like that. I don't know why that not the same size. That should be the same size. Oh look, there we go. It's all good now. Just gonna Pretend that's the same size. All right, so we got that right there. We got a big old building right here, so we can't do nothing about that. But what we can do is, let's say we turn this way, right? And then we go up. We go up this way. We got to go pretty far. It's a Giga coaster now. We go pretty far out. Okay. So you see the problem. You see the problem here is we got all these cars right here. So the supports, let's make some blue supports. Yeah. Oh no, hold on, keep that red. Yeah. All right. Got blue supports. So obviously we're gonna have some supports directly under. So all these cars, they're gonna have to go. Then we're gonna have supports like this, and these gonna have to go out kind of wide. And as the thing gets taller, they're gonna have to get wider. So you know, all these cars here, they gotta go too. And then unless we go this way, then those cars gotta go. So let's just say that this is the lift hill and first job, and then the second hill, and then we make a red. We turn this way. Guys, we got a street right here. We can't do nothing about the street. So the supports, you know what the supports gotta do? They gotta go this way. And you know, if we keep oh man, I didn't mean to do that. If we keep going this way, then that's supposed to be red. Come on now. If we keep going this way, what are we gonna do about all these cars? Just put them in the middle of the street. Where are they gonna go? If we can't just put them over like that, then we just lose all those parking spaces. And so if we keep doing this all the way around, let me just do a quick sketch right here. So y'all saying we're gonna go like all the way down here, then like do some stuff up there, and then come back, and you know, go back around and go through, and then bam, Giga coaster. You're saying so y'all saying that this is just gonna work? That we're just gonna take some supports and just throw it all out in there, and then we're just not gonna lose any parking spaces? You know, and then that we can't do that. That's illegal. This is highly illegal. Knott's Berry Farm can't do that. It's sent to jail. And same thing over here. We put supports like that. You just can't do it. It's just not reasonable. We can't do it, guys. It's not happening. We're not getting a Giga. Before I move on from talking about space, I just want to mention where some of this info even came from. Screamscape. Okay, so first of all, there is virtually no actual evidence or information that backs up this theory or makes it reputable or believable in any way. The only actual information we get from this site is that Cedar Fair has gone through with all of their Giga projects and they have been successful. So therefore, Knott's is getting a Giga. No. Just... That's not how this works. When did Cedar Fair do or say anything about being interested in building this thing? Please let me know if that's the case. I'd love to hear it. And before you go about saying that Leviathan was originally for Knott's Berry Farm, well, guess what? Leviathan didn't go to Knott's Berry Farm. It went to Canada's Wonderland. And I'm sure it didn't go to Knott's for many reasons. Some of them I probably have already discussed in this video. Let's also keep in mind that Leviathan opened in 2012, and so the planning and construction stages was likely between 2010 and 2011, if not earlier. I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty sure 2010 and 2011 Knott's was very different from 2021 Knott's in terms of ride lineup. Back then, the boardwalk had the following: Boomerang, Perilous Plunge, and Riptide, all of which were eventually removed. Even the building where Iron Reef and Berry Tales later occupied wasn't in use yet. So if Leviathan was gonna go to Knott, then I feel like the boardwalk would have actually been a more realistic location for this attraction. But now in 2021, we have Coast Rider, the Flat Rides, Berry Tales, and Hang Time taking up all that space. So anyways, back to Screamscape. This site also sort of talks about how the station and turnaround can fit in where Mystery Lodge currently is. I mean, my guy, that's just... You see, this isn't how logic works. Here, let me illustrate a scenario for you. You see this little bit of empty space right here? That's right, this tiny little sliver of land. Well, I'm fairly certain that we can fit Tatsu's pretzel loop right here. You know what that means? That's right, it basically confirms that Knott's is going to be building a quintuple launch Mobius loop dueling B&M flying coaster. It's going to be the world's tallest, fastest, longest, steepest, most intense, and most nausea-inducing roller coaster ever built. And most importantly, it's going to be called Charlie Brown's West Coast Race Kite Flyers. Okay, you might be laughing, but do you truthfully see how dumb that seems? Like, you can just tell that there is absolutely nothing realistic about that launched flyer theory, and that's essentially how I feel about this Giga rumor, although not to that extent by any means. So let's discuss some other problems with this rumor. A big problem with this is the fact that a gigantic, looming, modern steel roller coaster would completely obstruct the skyline from the previously mentioned preserved historical ghost town. Allow me to demonstrate utilizing my master photoshopping skills. Bam! This is not what Knott's wants. They don't want people to see a towering steel roller coaster as a backdrop to Knott's first actual attraction. Even if the majority of this ride is over at the southern lot, 300 feet is still extremely tall, and with a giant stretched out lift hill, this thing will very easily be visible and will ultimately ruin the vibe of the ghost town. Moving forwards, I might as well just go ahead and mention budgeting. These things are not cheap, my guy. Both Fury 325 and Orion cost around $30 million each, so if Knott's were to go with the B&M Giga route, then yes, this would also cost around $30 million just to build the coaster. That doesn't exactly account for all the demolition and landscaping that is very necessary in order to give this thing a workable foundation. Given that Knott's isn't even a thrill destination, it is more family oriented, I don't think they're willing to make that large of an investment on something most of the public aren't even anticipating. Let's be real here, guys, only enthusiasts actually want this thing to happen. Another thing that I wanted to bring up was this image right here. This is just some documentation indicating that Knott's purchased parts in April from B&M. This is not an indicator that Knott's is building a brand new B&M. Let's not forget, Knott's does already have a very iconic and expensive B&M, Silver Bullet. And because this is Knott's only B&M, I can't really think of any other reason Knott's would be receiving B&M parts, especially considering that this was documented before the park reopened this year, and since none of the rides had run in over a year at that time, they would of course need to receive some care and maintenance in order to get them running again. Another thing to note is that, let's say hypothetically this was for a new coaster they were building. Knott's Berry Farm would not spend the money and order parts for a new roller coaster before receiving approval to even build said attraction, and in order to receive approval for construction, Knott's would have already had to propose the blueprints and plans for the coaster, and that documentation would have had to been made public. And knowing the coaster community, if that information was already published somewhere, then someone would have found it and reposted it, I guarantee it. But since those blueprints don't exist anywhere as far as I'm concerned, Knott's never gained approval to build a new roller coaster and therefore never ordered parts for a brand new roller coaster from B&M. And this brings me up to another point. There is absolutely no apparent work or preparation for a new attraction in general. No markers, no landscaping, no demolition, no construction. Since when was Knott's even said to be building a new roller coaster in the first place? Keep in mind, we literally just got Hang Time in 2018. And for those of you who are spoiled SoCal enthusiasts, yes, Hang Time is still considered a new attraction, especially when you realize that the last major coaster Knott's built and opened was Silver Bullet back in 2004, a 14-year gap before Hang Time was built, replacing another major coaster, Boomerang. How is it realistic to expect Knott's to make a $30 million investment just 3 or 4 years after Hang Time's debut? I just don't find it plausible. Overall, Knott's is just not in a position to construct such a beast of a thrill ride. In my eyes, this Giga rumor is only fueled by desperation from coaster enthusiasts in Southern California to have a Giga coaster on the West Coast. There's zero actual evidence or information that even supports this theory, and just because some big influencers out there have picked up on the theory too, that doesn't validate this rumor at all. Like, just because Taylor Bybee suddenly says that it's likely or possible doesn't confirm that it's actually happening. I'm calling you out, Brandon. Even if Knott's defies all odds and somehow, some way, builds a Giga coaster, it just doesn't make sense. All it does is make a giant crowd magnet for the already small capacity theme park, and I'm not trying to be a stingy critic here on people's hopes and beliefs, but all I can say is, just drop the rumor. It ain't happening. I don't think Knott's is building a roller coaster in general anytime soon, and when they are ready to build a new roller coaster, it's not going to be a freaking Giga coaster. If they miraculously pull it off, then you can go ahead and point your fingers at me and laugh for being wrong. But until that day comes, I'm going to confidently stand by my thoughts about this ridiculously unrealistic rumor. So with that said, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.